Have you ever wondered what really goes on behind the scenes at a luxury car dealership, where dreams are sold along with 4 wheels and a steering wheel? Imagine strolling onto the showroom floor, expecting the usual polished smiles and smooth-talking pitches, only to catch a life-altering lie in progress. Now picture yourself as the secret owner of that very dealership, quietly observing the people who claim to represent your pride and passion. This is the story of Trevor Washington, the black entrepreneur who went undercover, stepped into his own showroom and discovered a betrayal so shocking that it would change his dealership and his life forever. Trevor Washington was not a man who liked to stand idly by when something felt off. He was the founder and majority shareholder of Washington and Glendale Autos, a flourishing dealership near Los Angeles that specialized in both pre-owned and brand-new Toyotas. Over the years, Trevor had heard the usual rumors that swirl around any large sales operation: stories of pushy deals, questionable financing tactics, and inflated add-ons. Most of it, he believed, was either hearsay or the kind of isolated incidents that any good manager should be able to spot and fix right away. But in the past 6 months, there had been an uptick in complaints emailed directly to his personal account. Although Trevor maintained a strong leadership presence, meeting with staff, participating in local community events, and reviewing monthly performance reports, he was also a man who believed in trusting his managers. He delegated day-to-day tasks to his general manager, a man named David Keller, while focusing his own energy on networking, strategic growth, and philanthropic endeavors. But something kept gnawing at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was a deeper issue lurking behind the glossy marketing brochures and the immaculate showroom floors. Why else would multiple long-term customers suddenly complain about being misled or short-changed? Why would they accuse a top salesman named Kevin Chambers of blatant dishonesty? Kevin was known for setting monthly records and winning performance-based prizes, all while allegedly providing stellar customer service. He was so good at closing deals that David Keller regularly touted Kevin as an example for new sales reps to emulate. Trevor decided it was time to do something more radical. He arranged to work from home for a week, telling David and the rest of the management team that he needed space to focus on a new charity initiative. This gave him the freedom to slip into his own dealership incognito, disguised as a potential buyer. He knew that as a black man, the staff might treat him differently if they didn't recognize him as the owner. He wanted to see how they treated an ordinary customer walking in off the street. More importantly, he wanted to see Kevin Chambers in action for himself, because if there was any truth to the rumors, Trevor was determined to root out the problem for good. On a brisk Monday morning, Trevor left his spacious suburban home, wearing an outfit that was a far cry from his usual tailored suits and polished dress shoes. Instead, he wore faded jeans, scuffed sneakers, and a simple hoodie. He swapped his usual watch, a sleek diamond-encrusted timepiece, for a modest digital watch that cost less than $20. Before leaving, he checked himself in the mirror. He hardly recognized the reflection staring back at him. Good. He wanted to look like an everyday working man in search of a decent car, not the multi-millionaire entrepreneur who owned the entire operation. Slipping into his everyday SUV, a black Toyota Highlander, coincidentally purchased from his own dealership under an anonymous entity to maintain privacy, Trevor felt a flutter of nerves. He reminded himself that he'd grown up in a tough neighborhood, overcame countless obstacles, and built this dealership empire from the ground up. He was no stranger to hard work or confrontation. Still, the idea of going undercover in his own business was both thrilling and unsettling. He wondered what he might uncover in the next few hours. What if everything was fine, and the negative reviews were just misunderstandings? Or what if the rumors were true, and the culture had turned toxic under his nose? He parked a block away from the dealership, just to ensure no one would spot his SUV, and connect it with the boss. Then, with a determined breath, he headed for the large glass doors, bearing the name Washington and Glendale Autos. The moment Trevor stepped through the front entrance, the familiar swirl of activity washed over him. Bright overhead lights bouncing off shiny car hoods. The hum of conversation, punctuated by the occasional ring of a phone, and the mechanical click of the rotating door leading to the service area. If he hadn't known better, he would have thought this was just another normal day. Secretly, a small part of him hoped it was. A tall woman with neatly braided hair wearing the dealership's navy blue polo greeted him at the reception desk. Her name tag read Felicia. "Hello, welcome to Washington and Glendale Autos," she said with a friendly smile. "Looking for something special today?" Yeah," Trevor replied, affecting a slightly nervous voice. "I'm interested in a family car, maybe a Toyota Camry or a Corolla. Something reliable but not too expensive." Felicia nodded. "I'd be happy to connect you with one of our sales representatives. Let me see who's available." She glanced down at her tablet, scrolling through a list of names. "It looks like Kevin is free right now. I'll have him come right over." Trevor forced a casual smile. "Great, thanks." Though his heart was thumping in anticipation, he took the next few moments to look around the spacious showroom, taking in the new line of Camrys and a newly arrived hybrid SUV. There were a few other customers, mostly couples conversing with other sales reps. He tried to stand inconspicuously near a silver Camry, fiddling with the handle and checking the window sticker. That was when he heard a calm but confident voice behind him. "Hey there. Thinking about the Camry, huh? Solid choice. My name's Kevin. Kevin Chambers." Trevor turned. Kevin was every bit the polished salesman he'd been described to be: tall, athletic build, wearing a crisp grey suit that screamed success. His handshake was firm, his smile wide, and his eyes gave off a self-assured glint that made Trevor wonder how many deals this man had closed in the last month alone. "Name's, Trevor," said, using a shortened version of his name. He rarely used one that he hoped wouldn't tip anyone off. He deliberately avoided eye contact for a second, as if he was shy. "I'm looking for something that's good on gas, comfortable maybe for road trips. Something for the family." Kevin nodded. "You came to the right place. The Toyota Camry has been a top seller for decades. Dependable, great on mileage, and still stylish enough that you won't feel like you're driving a boring old sedan. Let me show you some options." Trevor followed Kevin across the showroom toward a dark blue Camry. A few other employees caught Trevor's eye for a moment, but no one seemed to notice that he looked anything like the boss they were used to seeing. The disguise was working. As Kevin began his sales pitch, Trevor studied him carefully. The man was smooth, confident, polite, and knowledgeable about the vehicle's features. He highlighted the Camry's advanced safety systems, its hybrid engine option, and the robust warranty package. At first glance, there was nothing overtly suspicious. If anything, Kevin seemed exceptionally good at his job. But then came the subtle shifts. Kevin mentioned additional fees that Trevor knew were not standard. He implied that certain protective coatings were mandatory, even though Trevor knew from experience that those add-ons were always optional. He even referenced a special finance rate that seemed significantly higher than the current promotional APR from Toyota Financial Services. Trevor listened intently, letting Kevin weave his tale. He didn't immediately challenge him, because part of going undercover was to see just how far the salesman would go. The initial signs were worrisome, but not conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. After all, some dealerships would indeed bundle certain features, and maybe Kevin was just working the typical profit angles. Still, Trevor felt a pang of disappointment. He had explicitly trained his entire staff, and by extension, David Keller had repeated his directives to never lie to customers or push unnecessary add-ons under false pretenses. They might offer extra services, yes, but honesty was supposed to be paramount. So Kevin said, breaking into his thoughts, "We're looking at a base price of $28,000 for this model. However, with the diamond coat protection extended, warranty and the dealership's required tracking system, your out-the-door price would be closer to $35,000 before taxes." "Required tracking system?" Trevor asked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought that was an optional device for anti-theft." Kevin laughed lightly, waving a dismissive hand. "The manager insists we install them on all vehicles now. Insurance companies love it, and it's for your own good. If the car gets stolen, you'll be glad we have that system on there. It's just part of the deal." Trevor fought the urge to call him out. He knew for a fact that Washington and Glendale Autos had no such mandatory requirement. Yes, they offered a low-jack system if the customer wanted it, but it was never forced upon them. "Oh, right, I see," he said, instead feigning acceptance. Despite the rational facade, Kevin wore Trevor's stomach knotted. What else was Kevin willing to claim was mandatory? If that was the approach with him, how many unsuspecting customers had been fleeced? As they walked toward the finance office, Trevor couldn't help but reflect on his own past. Growing up in a predominantly black neighborhood in south-central LA, he had seen firsthand how easy it was for people with limited financial knowledge to get tricked into bad deals, whether it was predatory payday loans, sky-high used car interest rates, or unscrupulous sales tactics. He'd witnessed family and friends struggle to recover from financial hits they never saw coming. He built Washington and Glendale Autos specifically to be a different kind of dealership, one that prided itself on integrity, transparency, and treating every customer with respect, regardless of their background or how they looked. Yet here he was, encountering the exact opposite of those core values, and from one of his top employees, no less. Little by little, the notion that Kevin was just too good to be true began to solidify. Or perhaps, in the eyes of the management team, Kevin's questionable methods had been tolerated or even silently encouraged because he brought in high revenue. Trevor's mind raced with possibilities each more troubling than the last. Before they reached the finance office, Kevin excused himself to quickly check on another customer who had apparently just arrived. Trevor took the opportunity to wander around the showroom and overheard a snippet of conversation that caught his attention. An older woman, wearing a red cardigan, stood near a silver Toyota RAV4, glancing through the window sticker. She seemed confused. Another salesman, Manny, was walking her through the features. "I'm pretty sure the warranty is included in the MSRP," Manny said. "You don't need to pay extra for it if you don't want to." "Kevin told me something else," the woman said. Perplexed, he said I had to pay an extra $1,000 for the dealership's special warranty. That's on top of Toyota's regular coverage. Manny frowned. "That doesn't sound right." "Let me check your paperwork." Trevor felt his blood pressure rise. The older woman turned, noticing him standing nearby, a worried look on her face. He quickly smiled politely and moved on, but the seed of anger was already planted. He'd uncovered a second instance of Kevin telling bold-faced lies, ones that specifically preyed on people's ignorance or confusion. Manny seemed genuine in trying to clarify the situation, which was a small relief. It meant not every salesperson was complicit. But it also underscored how Kevin had become comfortable enough in his deceptions to contradict standard dealership policies in broad daylight. Trevor decided to escalate his covert operation. He wanted to talk to the sales manager, though not as himself, of course. Instead, he would approach him as an irate customer, or at least a suspicious one, to see how management would handle the situation. If David Keller was in on the scheme, or if he allowed Kevin's questionable tactics to slide, that would be a deeper betrayal than Trevor could stomach. He scanned the glass-walled offices at the back of the showroom until he spotted a large man with salt and pepper hair standing behind a desk strewn with papers. A bronze nameplate read, "Paul Norris, Sales Manager." Trevor knocked softly on the open door. "Hi, are you?" "Paul." Paul glanced up from his paperwork, looking slightly harried. "Yes, can I help you?" "I was talking with Kevin about a Camry," Trevor said. "But some of the fees he mentioned, well, they don't seem right. He told me there's a mandatory tracking system and a dealership warranty that isn't part of the manufacturer's coverage." Paul's brow furrowed. "Well, the tracking system is optional. Extended warranty is optional too." Kevin usually clarifies that. It's possible there was a misunderstanding. Trevor stood firm, determined to see if Paul would try to protect Kevin. He specifically said these costs were mandatory. "He also quoted me a price that was several $1,000s above what I see on the window sticker." Paul sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Let me pull up Kevin's deals for the day and check if something went wrong. It might be a simple miscommunication. I assure you we take transparency seriously." As he typed into his computer, Trevor noted the faint tension in his voice. It could be worry that a deal was about to slip away, or it could be the stress of someone who knew exactly what was going on. After a brief silence, Paul turned back to Trevor, his face carefully neutral. "I see Kevin has started a quote at $35,000 for the Camry. That includes a $1,500 protection package and a $1,000 extended warranty coverage from the dealership. While we do recommend these, they shouldn't be presented as mandatory. I'll address that with Kevin." Trevor decided to press harder. "So you're saying the final price should be more like $28,000 plus taxes, plus maybe some optional extras, but not necessarily those?" Paul nodded, offering a tight smile. "Correct. We want our customers to feel they have a choice. I'll speak to Kevin immediately. Let's sort this out so you can get the best deal." "Okay," Trevor said, feigning a measure of relief. "I appreciate that." Paul rose from his chair, glancing at the clock on the wall. "I'll be right back. Make yourself comfortable." Trevor watched as Paul left the office, presumably to find Kevin. He had to remind himself to remain calm, but he couldn't help feeling an undercurrent of anger. If Paul truly was committed to honesty, he would have made sure all his top sales reps followed those guidelines to the letter. Trevor suspected Paul was walking a fine line, perhaps aware of Kevin's unorthodox methods, but willing to look the other way, as long as the sales numbers rolled in. Whether he was complicit or just negligent, Paul was going to get a serious wake-up call soon. With Paul gone, Trevor stepped out of the office and found a discreet corner behind a decorative wall near the staff break room, where he could watch the main floor unseen. As he hovered, he picked up on a heated conversation Paul and Kevin. He caught phrases here and there. "Not mandatory, Kevin. We've been over this. Makes the dealership extra money. Best salesman here. They never complain if they don't know better. Can't keep doing this. If the boss finds out, we'll all be in trouble." Trevor clenched his jaw. The conversation was short, and soon Paul emerged, adjusting his tie and heading back to his office. Kevin stormed off in the opposite direction away from the showroom floor. Trevor saw the thunderous look on Kevin's face before he disappeared into another corridor. Now, Trevor had confirmation that the sales manager knew at least part of what Kevin was doing, and the mention of "if the boss finds out" echoed in Trevor's mind, fueling his resolve to continue with his undercover mission. The boss had indeed found out, and it was worse than he feared. Before Trevor could decide his next move, the older woman in the red cardigan reappeared, accompanied by Manny, the other salesman. Manny was carrying a folder of paperwork. They seemed to be heading toward the finance office. The woman still wore a concerned look. "Ma'am," Manny said gently, "I'll make sure we get the correct pricing for you. Don't worry about what Kevin said earlier. He's probably just overworked." He led her down the corridor. Trevor felt a swell of gratitude toward Manny, who appeared to genuinely care about the customer's well-being and the dealership's reputation. But Manny's overshadowed role, compared to Kevin's star salesman status, told him everything he needed to know about the culture forming under David Keller and Paul Norris. The more unscrupulous employees might have been overshadowing the good ones, simply because they brought in bigger commissions. He made a mental note to reward Manny somehow, once everything was out in the open, assuming Manny's sincerity continued to prove genuine. Trevor decided to continue his charade with Kevin, suspecting Kevin would come back to try to smooth things over. Sure enough, minutes later, Kevin re-emerged onto the showroom floor, mask of confidence back in place. He caught sight of Trevor lurking near a burgundy Camry and quickly put on a warm smile. "Trev, sorry about that. Little mix-up in the system," Kevin said, shrugging it off as if it were nothing. "Paul told me you're interested in a lower price option. We can talk about that, or we can go for a test drive if you want to get a feel for the car. Whichever you prefer." Trevor forced a hesitant nod, playing the role of the cautious buyer. "Test drive sounds good. I want to see how it handles on the road." "Excellent choice," Kevin said, his voice brimming with sales enthusiasm. He grabbed a set of keys from a lockbox behind the reception desk. "Let's take out that blue Camry you liked." As they walked outside, Trevor felt the cool air hit his face, grounding him. There on the lot sat a row of pristine vehicles, each gleaming under the California sunshine. The total inventory was worth millions, a testament to Trevor's tenacity in growing his dealership. But the bittersweet taste of betrayal lingered. Kevin guided Trevor to a brand new 2025 Toyota Camry Hybrid. Trevor couldn't help but admire the craftsmanship. Toyota had outdone themselves with the latest model. Still, his admiration was tempered by the swirling questions in his mind. They buckled in, and Kevin turned on the engine. The car purred to life, the quiet hum of the hybrid system barely audible. Trevor took the driver's seat, adjusting mirrors and seat position. If this had been a genuine shopping trip, he might have genuinely enjoyed the experience. But he was here on a mission. "So how often do you travel?" Kevin asked casually, switching back into small talk. "Long commutes. Family trips." Trevor gave him a scripted reply. Married, 2 kids, dog, planning lots of weekend getaways. He watched Kevin closely, looking for any sign of guilt or hesitation after being called out by Paul. Yet Kevin seemed as smooth as ever, extolling the Camry's fuel efficiency, comfort, and advanced safety features. He was undeniably very good at weaving a compelling narrative. Trevor could see how many customers would trust him, especially if they didn't know all the facts. Halfway through the test drive, Kevin turned to Trevor with a conspiratorial grin. "You know, if we push this deal through today, I can probably knock off a couple $100 here and there. Maybe even throw in free floor mats." Trevor feigned enthusiasm. "Sounds like a deal. But I really need the final price to be within my budget. I was hoping to keep it under 30,000. Kevin nodded thoughtfully. Let's see what I can do. No promises, but I'll talk to my manager. I want to earn your business, Trev. The rest of the drive was uneventful. Trevor tested the acceleration, braked a few times, and navigated through a nearby residential area to see how the suspension handled bumps. By the time they returned to the dealership lot, Trevor already knew he liked the car itself, but that wasn't the point of this entire charade. Back inside, Kevin led Trevor to a table in the center of the showroom. He spread out paperwork and began filling in numbers. Okay, so base price, $28,000. Tax, title, and license fees will add roughly $2,800. Now about that protection package we discussed. Diamond coat undercarriage. Treatment, extended coverage for major parts. Normally $1,500, but I can do it for $200. And the tracking system is $1,000, but let me see if I can waive half of that. He scribbled notes on a piece of paper, old school style, which made it all look more personal than computerized forms. So we're close to $33,000. But let me see if the finance manager can get you an APR that lowers your monthly payment enough to offset some costs. Let me do some quick math. Trevor watched him fighting an inner battle between outrage and the need to keep playing along. Kevin was still labeling the add-ons as though they were must-haves, except now he was framing them as partial giveaways to sweeten the deal. It was cunning turn something optional into an apparent discount. Many buyers would jump at the chance to knock off a few $100s, not realizing they didn't have to buy the extra items in the first place. Trevor decided to throw in a direct question, testing Kevin's honesty. If I skip the protection package and tracking system altogether, can I get this closer to $28,000 or $30,000 out the door? Kevin tilted his head as though considering an absurd request. Well, theoretically, yes. But you have to realize we've already installed the tracking system on every car on the lot. It's just something we do to protect our inventory. And the protective coating. That's recommended by Toyota. If you skip it, you might void certain parts of your warranty. I wouldn't advise it. That was an outright lie. Trevor knew Toyota did not require any third-party coatings to maintain the factory warranty. The rage coiled in Trevor's gut, but he forced a casual nod. I see. That's too bad. Kevin brightened. Look, let me talk to the finance manager. I'll see if we can do a little magic to get you closer to your budget. Be right back. As Kevin stood up, Trevor stared at his departing figure, thinking, how many people have you lied to? Kevin. He felt a pang of guilt that some unsuspecting customers, maybe less financially savvy or desperate for a car, would swallow these manipulations without question. And Kevin was operating freely day after day, right under the nose of David Keller and Paul Norris, who either turned a blind eye or were complicit. While Kevin stepped away, Trevor noticed a familiar face across the showroom. David Keller, the general manager. David was a white man in his early 50s with a friendly demeanor that put many people at ease. Trevor had personally hired David for his strong track record and leadership style. David had believed in Trevor's vision from the start, a dealership built on trust and customer satisfaction. Or so Trevor had thought. David approached with a smile, hand extended. Welcome to Washington and Glendale Autos. I'm David Keller, the GM here. Is everything going well so far? Trevor played the part of a hesitant customer. I've got some concerns, honestly. Some of the fees don't add up. Kevin said, certain things are mandatory, but I've seen different information online. David's smile flickered slightly, but he maintained a pleasant tone. We try to be transparent with all of our customers. Sometimes there are miscommunications, but I'm here to ensure you have the best experience. Kevin's one of our top guys, but if something's confusing, let me clarify it for you. Trevor noticed David did not outright deny the existence of those mandatory fees. Instead, he used a vague excuse of miscommunication. Trevor pressed. Is the tracking system really installed on every single vehicle, so I have to pay for it? David hesitated, and in that moment, Trevor read the flicker of recognition in his eyes. David was formulating a polite half-truth. We do install it on a majority of our vehicles, especially the higher trim models, as a service to protect both the dealership and the customer. It can be beneficial for lowering insurance rates. Trevor nodded slowly. But if I don't want it? David coughed into his hand, then forced a warmer tone. We'd have to see if the system is already activated or not. Sometimes it's installed but not activated. Let's talk to the finance manager and figure out the best solution for you. Okay, Trevor. Gave him a tight-lipped grin. Sure, I appreciate that. In that brief interaction, Trevor read volumes. David Keller was not the innocent manager oblivious to Kevin's practices. At best, he was complicit in permitting or encouraging borderline unethical add-ons. At worst, he was orchestrating them for profit. Trevor's stomach churned with disappointment and anger. This man had been entrusted with Trevor's dream, and he was trampling all over it in the name of higher margins. Minutes later, Kevin reappeared, beckoning Trevor into the finance office at the far side of the building. The finance manager, a middle-aged woman named Sharon, greeted Trevor with a polite professional smile. Her office was tidy with a small plant on the desk and a framed motivational quote on the wall reading, "Honesty and integrity are the foundations of success." Trevor wondered if Sharon actually lived by those words, or just liked the way they looked. Kevin began the conversation. So Sharon Trev here is interested in the Camry hybrid we discussed. I've done my best to get him a great deal. We're trying to see if we can work out an ape that fits his monthly budget. Sharon tapped her keyboard. Sure thing. Let me pull up your credit score and financing options. She started to type, asking Trevor for some basic info like name and address. Trevor had set up a separate identity for this infiltration, including a moderate credit score, so he provided the details. After a few seconds, Sharon looked up with a practiced smile. You have decent credit, Trev. Based on what I'm seeing, you should qualify for the promotional APR of 2.9% that Toyota is offering right now. Kevin cleared his throat. Is that locked in? Because I've seen some variance based on certain factors. Sharon shrugged. It's pretty straightforward if his credit score is within the qualifying range. Let me confirm the final numbers. She tapped a few more keys. Then, to Trevor's surprise, Sharon swiveled the monitor around to show him. If you go with 2.9% on a 60-month term, your monthly payment for the $28,000 base plus taxes and fees would be about $530 a month. Trevor liked Sharon's transparency. But Kevin interjected. We should also factor in the protection package and the tracking system, right? Sharon nodded, then quickly added the amounts to the calculation. That brings your total to $33,000, which changes your monthly to around $625. Trevor, playing the cautious customer, frowned. That's a bit high. Could we drop the package and the tracking system? Sharon turned to Kevin, seeking guidance. Kevin gave her a meaningful glance, almost as if to say, Don't sabotage my sale. But Sharon seemed caught between following Kevin's lead and doing what was ethically correct. Well, Sharon said the extended warranty offered by the dealership is optional. The tracking system is, She paused, flicking her eyes to Kevin, then back to Trevor. We've already installed it on most of our new vehicles, but if you really don't want it, I'll see if we can remove that cost. Trevor noted her hesitation. She was trying to do the right thing, but also felt pressured by Kevin. So Kevin's intimidation extends to the finance office, Trevor thought. Or maybe it's an unspoken rule from higher up. Kevin forced a laugh. But Trev, you said you travel with your family and dog. Don't you want peace of mind with the warranty and tracking system? If something goes wrong with the hybrid battery, you'll be covered. If the car gets stolen, it'll be easy to locate. Trevor let out a breath. It's a matter of budget. Let's see what we can do, Sharon said, gently turning to her screen again. She removed both add-ons and recalculated. Your total would be closer to $31,000 out the door without those extras. Monthly around $585. Trevor nodded thoughtfully as though considering. He glanced at Kevin, whose forced grin hinted at frustration. Yeah, maybe we should do that, Trevor said. Kevin opened his mouth to protest further, but Sharon smoothly continued. Of course, you can also purchase extended coverage later, as long as it's within the manufacturer's warranty period. And if you change your mind about the tracking system, we can always install it later, if not already connected. That was the first time Trevor had heard the whole truth about the tracking system since stepping into the dealership. He gave Sharon a grateful nod. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind. Kevin's expression soured slightly, but he kept his composure. I'll let you two finalize the paperwork, he said, rising to leave. Trevor could only guess he was going to vent his frustration, or maybe pull David aside to see if they could salvage the add-on revenue. Before Trevor could finalize any mock purchase, a commotion broke out near the service department. A frantic man, wearing grease-stained overalls, burst into the showroom, shouting, Mr. Keller! Mr. Keller, we have a problem! Heads turned, and David Keller quickly rushed over to meet the panicked man. Trevor excused himself from Sharon's office, using the distraction to slip away. Curiosity gnawed at him. This might be something serious, and he wanted to see how management handled crises. He trailed behind the group, heading toward the service department. A small crowd gathered near a brand-new Toyota Tundra that was hoisted on a lift. The left side of the truck had a deep gash, like it had been side-swiped. Another customer, red-faced and furious, was shouting at a service technician. I brought this truck in for a routine check, the customer yelled. And now there's a huge scrape on the side. Who's responsible for this? I've only had this thing for 3 days. David Keller tried to defuse the situation, palms raised in a placating gesture. Sir, please calm down. We'll get to the bottom of this. Our insurance will cover any damage caused while the vehicle is in our possession. That's not the point, the customer roared. I'm furious that this even happened. You guys are supposed to be professionals. The service manager, a stout man with a bushy mustache named Jorge, quickly explained. One of the junior technicians was moving the truck and accidentally sideswiped a concrete post. I'm so sorry. We'll take full responsibility. A hush fell over the group. Trevor watched as Kevin sidled into the scene, scanning the chaos. Paul Norris arrived too. David tried to regain control. We'll fix it free of charge and provide a loaner vehicle in the meantime. There's no excuse, but we will make it right. The outraged customer demanded to speak with the owner of the dealership, presumably hoping for a more direct line of accountability. David and Paul exchanged nervous glances. Trevor almost stepped forward, the impulse strong to reveal himself. But he reminded himself of his original mission to observe how they handled honesty, accountability, and damage control. All right, I'll expect a brand new door panel, not some cheap patch job, the customer fumed. And I want paperwork stating it's all on your dime." "Understood," David said calmly. "We'll handle it." The crisis seemed containable, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. Trevor realized this could be an opportunity. With multiple issues swirling Kevin's dishonest tactics, the service department mistake, and an angry customer, things might unravel quickly. Perhaps people would reveal their true selves under pressure. While David and Jorge escorted the furious truck owner to a separate office for more private discussions, Trevor slipped back to the main showroom. There he found Kevin leaning over a desk, scribbling notes on a clipboard. As Trevor approached, he caught a glimpse of Kevin's expression, exasperated, tense, and for the first time somewhat vulnerable. "Trev, I've been thinking." Kevin began, forcing a slight grin. "There might be a better lease option for you instead of buying. That way we can wrap the cost of the add-ons into the monthly, and you get a lower monthly payment overall." Trevor gave him a measured look. "I'm not sure. After hearing everything, I'm still worried about what's really required, and what's just optional." Kevin sighed, dropping the pretense for a moment. "Look, man, the dealership has certain quotas. We have overhead. We've got to include some of these extras, or we'll lose money." He paused, then added, "And you have to understand, guys like me. We only get paid if we sell. We have families, too." Trevor recognized the plea for sympathy. But it wasn't entirely unjustified. Salespeople do rely heavily on commissions. Still, that didn't excuse lying. "I get it," Trevor responded quietly. "But I also don't want to get taken advantage of. I've got a family, too." Kevin lowered his voice as though letting Trevor in on a secret. "Look, the mandatory stuff might not be 100% mandatory, but I can't just waive it for everyone. I can maybe cut you a deal, but you've got to promise not to talk about it too loudly. Otherwise, my manager's going to have my head." It was a direct admission of deceitful practice delivered as if confiding in a friend. Trevor felt a surge of anger combined with pity. Kevin was effectively telling Trevor to collude in his underhanded approach. This was beyond the pale. Trevor had all the evidence he needed. Kevin was openly acknowledging his unethical pitch. "All right, I understand," Trevor said, feigning a conspiratorial nod. "Let me think about it." Kevin patted him on the shoulder. "Sure thing, brother. Take your time." With the tension still high from the damaged Tundra, the older woman in the red cardigan emerged from the finance office, accompanied by Manny. She held a folder of paperwork, her expression now relieved. She spotted Trevor and offered a grateful nod. "I'm all sorted out. Manny helped me get exactly what I wanted without all those extra fees." "Thank goodness." Trevor smiled back. "Glad to hear it." Kevin, who was still within earshot, glanced over annoyance flickering across his face. Manny looked slightly uncomfortable as he passed by Kevin, but he stood tall as though ready to defend his ethical approach. Kevin said nothing, but Trevor could almost sense the tension between the two salesmen. Seeing Manny's and Sharon's contrasting honesty alongside Kevin's manipulations made it clear that the dealership was not entirely rotten. There were good people trying to do their jobs the right way. But the leadership or the environment allowed Kevin's deceit to flourish, and that was a systemic problem. He had seen enough, more than enough. Trevor decided it was time to unmask himself and confront this head-on. But he wanted to do it at the perfect moment in front of the right people so that no one could deny or spin the truth. He pulled out his phone and discreetly texted Felicia, the receptionist whom he trusted. She didn't know he was in disguise, but he needed her to gather David Keller, Paul Norris, and the entire sales team in the conference room. He typed a quick message. Felicia, this is Trevor Washington. I'm on site undercover. I need you to gather David Paul, Kevin Chambers, Manny Sharon, and the rest of the sales staff in the big conference room in 20 minutes. Tell them it's an urgent, mandatory meeting. Don't mention me by name, but say the owner is calling a surprise meeting. This is crucial. He had rarely done something this dramatic, but it felt necessary. The staff needed to see, hear, and experience the truth all at once. Within a couple of minutes, Felicia responded, "Yes, Mr. Washington. I'll make it happen." Trevor took a deep breath and slipped out to his SUV. He removed his hoodie and swapped it for a nicer blazer he kept in a garment bag in the back seat. He straightened his hair, replaced his cheap watch with his usual diamond-encrusted timepiece, and took a moment to compose himself. The transformation from Trev, the anxious car buyer, to Trevor Washington, the successful black owner of Washington and Glendale Autos, was striking. His reflection in the rearview mirror stared back at him, eyes filled with a steely resolve. Time to clean house, he thought. 20 minutes later, Trevor walked through the glass doors of the dealership with an air of command. Employees who had previously ignored him or greeted him casually as Trev suddenly froze, eyes widening in recognition. Some parted ways, murmuring, "Mr. Washington is here," while others just stared, puzzled and embarrassed. They hadn't recognized him earlier. He strode directly toward the conference room, where Felicia stood by the door, valiantly hiding her shock at Trevor's transformation. "They're all inside," she whispered. "Waiting for you." Trevor nodded. "Thank you." He opened the door to find David Paul, Kevin Manny, Sharon and the rest of the sales team seated around the long table. Confusion etched on their faces. Kevin's eyes locked onto Trevor with a dawning horror. David's jaw nearly dropped as the realization sank in that the customer from earlier was actually his boss. Paul's face went pale. Trevor took a seat at the head of the table, hands clasped in front of him. The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Good afternoon, everyone." Trevor began, his voice level but tense with emotion. "I'm sure you're all wondering what's going on. For those who don't know me, I'm Trevor Washington, the owner of Washington and Glendale Autos. I've been here all day, undercover posing as a customer." A collective gasp rippled around the room. Kevin looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Manny's eyes widened in surprise, then flicked to Kevin. Sharon inhaled sharply, putting two and two together. David and Paul both looked as though they were trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. Trevor continued. "Over the last few months, I've received complaints from customers about dishonest practices in our sales department. I didn't want to believe it at first. I built this dealership to be different, a place where we treat customers fairly, no matter their race background or level of car buying knowledge." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the room, locking on to each individual. "But I've seen enough today to confirm that some of these complaints are valid. I watched as Kevin Chambers misled me and others about mandatory fees, inflated warranties, and other questionable add-ons. I also overheard other employees, like Manny and Sharon, doing the exact opposite, treating customers with honesty and respect." Manny exhaled slowly, looking relieved to be recognized for doing the right thing. Kevin's face was contorted in an odd mix of anger and panic. Trevor turned his attention to Kevin. "Kevin, you are a top salesman here. You bring in significant revenue, but the methods you use are unethical. You lie to customers about mandatory add-ons, manipulate their budgets, and take advantage of their lack of knowledge about financing and warranties. This is not the culture I want in my dealership." Kevin opened his mouth, but no words came out. He glanced at David and Paul, perhaps seeking backup, but found no sympathy in their expressions. Trevor shifted his focus to David and Paul. David, Paul, you both had to be aware of what was happening. Paul, I overheard you telling Kevin to be careful so I wouldn't find out. David, you gave me a half-truth in the showroom about the tracking system. This has been going on under your leadership, and you've either turned a blind eye or, worse, encouraged it. David tried to interject Mr. Washington. Trevor silenced him with a raised hand. I trusted you. I believed you shared my vision. Today's events show me I was wrong. The room fell into a tense stillness. Trevor took a moment to gather his thoughts, then declared, Kevin, you are terminated from your position, effective immediately. Kevin's eyes went wide. Wait, you can't. I can, Trevor said firmly. And I have to. Your behavior is completely contrary to the values of this dealership. Kevin's jaw clenched. He rose from his seat, fists balled at his sides, but he didn't dare make a further scene. Instead, he stormed out of the conference room, slamming the door behind him. A few employees let out startled gasps. Trevor exhaled, then faced David and Paul again. As for you two, I am placing you on indefinite suspension without pay while I conduct a full investigation. I need to determine if your roles can be salvaged or if further disciplinary action, including termination, is warranted. For now, you are relieved of your managerial duties. David bowed his head, not meeting Trevor's gaze. Paul sank back into his chair, looking defeated. Trevor turned to Manny, Sharon, Felicia, and the rest of the staff. To those of you who do things the right way, thank you. I know some of you might have felt powerless or afraid to speak up. That ends now. We will institute an anonymous whistleblower policy, and I will personally review any reports of misconduct. We are resetting the culture starting today. Manny nodded, tears of relief shining in his eyes. Sharon also looked visibly moved. The tension that had suffused the room now began to ease, replaced by a cautious optimism. These employees realized that with the truth exposed, perhaps the dealership could become the beacon of honesty Trevor had always intended. Trevor continued. I expect every person here to uphold the values of transparency and respect. If we promise it, we deliver it. If it's optional, we say so. If we make a mistake, we own up to it. This is the new standard. The staff murmured in agreement. Some looked anxious, wondering if there would be further repercussions. But Trevor's tone had a note of hope. I'm going to need everyone's help to rebuild trust with the community. We'll be rolling out new training sessions on ethical sales practices and re-educating our managers and finance teams on how to represent optional products. Customers will be clearly informed of their choices, so they know what's mandatory and what's not. We'll also be releasing a statement to the public apologizing for any inconvenience or wrongdoing. He stood, taking a breath. Thank you all for your patience during this difficult conversation. Know that I'm doing this to protect the reputation of our dealership and to protect each of you who do your jobs with honesty and integrity. With that, Trevor dismissed the meeting. Employees filed out subdued but seemingly appreciative of the strong leadership stance. Manny and Sharon lingered, both offering quiet nods of gratitude before leaving. Trevor was left alone in the conference room, the magnitude of the day's events washing over him. Out in the parking lot, Kevin Chambers was throwing his personal items into the trunk of his car. A security guard hovered nearby, making sure there was no vandalism or confrontation. Kevin's cell phone buzzed with a call from a friend, or perhaps another potential job lead. He answered, voice agitated. Trevor watched from the window, reflecting on the irony of it all. Kevin's greed, His manipulative charm had earned him short-term success, but now it was costing him everything he'd built at the dealership. Hard karma indeed. Meanwhile, David and Paul quietly cleaned out their desks, each wearing a look of profound humiliation. A swirling rumor began to spread among the staff. Kevin had not only lied to customers, but also manipulated internal systems to inflate his commissions, which might lead to criminal consequences if uncovered during the investigation. Whether it was true or not, the seeds of karmic retribution were in the air, hinting that the downfall of Kevin and his enablers was far from over. Over the following weeks, Trevor took charge more directly than he had in years. He led workshops, reorganized departments, and personally reviewed deals. He promoted Manny to a senior sales role, trusting his honest approach to set a better standard. Sharon was recognized for her integrity in finance, and Felicia got a raise for her diligent customer service. Customers who had felt wronged received letters of apology and where appropriate refunds or free service packages. A wave of goodwill started to spread in the local community as word got out that the owner himself had rooted out corruption. For every negative review posted online, Trevor personally responded, inviting the customer to come back so he could make it right. The brand's reputation slowly began to mend. David Keller and Paul Norris were ultimately demoted. Trevor offered them a chance to stay on in lower roles if they agreed to follow strict guidelines and undergo retraining. Paul, humiliated, chose to quit, handing in his resignation rather than face the day-to-day reminder of his failures. David accepted his demotion, determined to earn back Trevor's trust. Time would tell if he could truly change. As for Kevin Chambers, rumors swirled that he tried to land a job at another dealership across town. Word traveled fast in the automotive industry, and Kevin's shady reputation preceded him. He found himself blackballed, struggling to find a position that would pay anywhere near what he once earned. In the end, Kevin left California altogether, chasing a fresh start elsewhere, his fate a cautionary tale about the perils of greed and deceit. 6 months later, Washington and Glendale Autos had turned a corner. Sales were steady, and customer satisfaction ratings reached an all-time high. Trevor Washington was more hands-on than ever, but in a healthier, more constructive way. He was mentoring new hires, sharing the story of how he'd built the business and how it almost went off the rails due to dishonesty. The staff revered him, not just as an owner, but as a leader who stood up for the values he preached. The walls of the conference room were newly decorated with motivational quotes, this time ones that truly reflected the dealership's renewed spirit. One read, "Our reputation is built on trust," and another, "We make deals with integrity." Trevor had them placed there as a daily reminder of the dealership's mission. And while the memory of Kevin's lies and David's complicity still stung, it also served as a crucial lesson. The moment you look away from your core values, you risk everything you've built. The best remedy was vigilance, transparency, and a willingness to confront problems head-on, even if that meant going undercover in your own business. From a simple test drive to the shocking revelation that brought down a top salesman, this story proves one thing: truth always comes out. Trevor Washington's bold decision to go undercover revealed the web of deceit festering in his own dealership. But instead of letting that dishonesty define Washington and Glendale Autos, Trevor seized the moment for change. By holding everyone accountable, no matter their rank, he reignited the dealership's mission of fairness and honesty. Now the business thrives on a renewed commitment to treating every customer with respect and integrity. If you found this story gripping, inspiring, or just eye-opening, be sure to hit the like button. Share it with friends who need a reminder that hard work and honesty pay off in the end. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unbelievable real-life tales that show us the power of standing up for what's right.